At 0607 hours, October 27, 2025, a dense morning fog blankets the Donetsk steppe. Visibility is less than 984 feet. A column of 30 Russian armored vehicles pushes down the T-0504 highway. Objective: Shakhove. But the Russian soldiers inside were operating blind. Every movement was already compromised, swallowed by a silent reconnaissance net, a textbook lesson in modern warfare. The fire control web belonged to Ukraine's 93rd Brigade. High above, from the moment the column rolled, eyes were watching. The electronic optics of the 93rd Brigade scanned without pause, tracking the thermal signature of the convoy as it crawled across the plain. The assets providing this overwatch: Leica 100 reconnaissance drones at high altitude and Mavic 3T drones lower down, a capability once exclusive to a nation's air force. They flew beyond the detection range of Russian radar, maintaining complete radio silence. Feeding encrypted data burst back to the command post, a triumph of defense technology. The entire armored formation had just moved beyond the effective screen of Russia's electronic warfare systems, a critical vulnerability in this global conflict. Near Novotroitsk, the Russian military was attempting to forge a new mechanized launch pad for its offensive. The strategic goal was to apply crushing pressure on the entire Ukrainian western Donetsk defense line. To achieve this, the Russian army committed a substantial force. 8 T-72B3 and T-80BVM tanks formed the breakthrough element, supported by 10 BMP-2 and BMP-3 infantry fighting vehicles. These vehicles carried mechanized infantry and vital fire support, while 5 MTLBs transported additional troops, munitions, and anti-tank teams. 2 UR-77 mine-clearing vehicles were present to blast corridors through defensive lines, followed by Ural and Kamaz trucks hauling the lifeblood of this war: artillery shells. They also carried fuel and communications gear. The total force was estimated at 150 to 180 soldiers, armed with enough heavy weapons and rockets for the Russian general staff to believe they could smash through any Ukrainian defenses, a critical failure in their pre-operation war analysis. But now they were caught, fully exposed in open country between abandoned coal pits with no forward observers on their flanks. This terrain was a natural kill alley. The line of sight was barely 164 feet. If ambushed, the chance of escape was zero. Ukraine had prepared for this exact moment. Along a sparse tree line to the south, anti-tank strike teams armed with Stugna P missiles lay in wait. Each team of 2 to 3 soldiers had been deployed in complete secrecy, their launchers already mounted on fixed pre-sighted platforms. They were camouflaged under grass nets and mounds of earth. Around them, launch pits for FPV drones were concealed in old trenches and foxholes. Anti-recon nets shielded them from aerial detection. Farther to the rear, 155mm artillery batteries had pre-registered coordinates for every Russian withdrawal route. From the field edges to a narrow gap between 2 ridges, it all formed a lethal, interlocking web of fire, a showcase of modern defense systems. 7.4 miles west of the kill zone, inside a forward command bunker, UAV coordinators of the 93rd Brigade monitored the feeds. They silently watched the Russian column's every move, the low-latency data link providing a real-time picture that is the core of any modern military update. At precisely 0600 hours, reconnaissance confirmed the convoy was closing on the kill zone, its speed a steady 15.5 miles per hour. Vehicle clusters were spaced 1,312 to 1,640 feet apart. They were now 1,800 meters from the ambush point. Less than 10 seconds passed. The fire authorization code flashed across the screens. The entire drone strike system shifted to combat mode. These modern weapons were now live. Control signals jumped to the operational band. Electric motors hissed as FPV drones rose from their camouflaged pits, the new face of warfare. High above, the Mavic 3T confirmed target locks. The enemy column below maintained its speed and formation, completely unaware. At that same moment, 0600 hours, with the Russian convoy less than half a mile from the trap, their movement suddenly changed. A subtle shift, but a critical one. They abandoned the main track, a kill zone for pre-sighted artillery. The convoy fractured. 3 parallel farm lanes, slicing through open fields. On paper, it was sound military doctrine. Disperse the formation, avoid a concentrated target, mitigate losses. But reality on the ground was different. It split the force into 3 isolated prongs. They were now unable to provide mutual support. Through the eyes of the 93rd Brigade's operators, this was no longer a mechanized army column. It was a herd, fragmented, exposed, and ready to be dismantled piece by piece. Then, a flicker on the reconnaissance screens an anomaly. A Leleka 100 drone reported sharp interference. The 2.4 GHz band was saturated, a cyclic spike on the frequency sweep, a textbook signature of active electronic warfare. In 3 seconds, the war analysis software had a lock. It pinpointed the source. A Krasuka 4 EW system mounted on an MTLB chassis had gone active, full spectrum suppression. Left unchecked, it would cripple their entire network of drones. It would send FPVs spiraling from the sky. The response was instant. Every platform switched to counter-jam protocols. Reconnaissance UAVs initiated frequency-hopping spread spectrum, hopping hundreds of times a second across 3 separate encrypted channels, evading the electronic assault, a key piece of modern defense technology. The FPV strike drones went silent, shifting to inertial control. Gyroscopes and accelerometers now guided them, holding a true course. They flew blind to the enemy, without external signals. The master control stream dropped to the L-band, a frequency the Krasuka system struggled to disrupt. To defeat GPS spoofing, a common tactic in this global conflict, the drones constantly cross-referenced their true trajectory. If deviation exceeded 1.5%, the drone severed its GPS link. Full inertial guidance took over. The result? Not a single one of the weapons drifted off target. Artillery had its coordinates. FPVs had their targets. Along the tree line, Stugnapi anti-tank teams were locked on. The troops were ready. The primary weapon in the Kostyantynivka operation, a one-way FPV kamikaze system, controlled directly by the elite UAV teams of the 1st Battalion, 93rd Brigade. These modern weapons were built for a single purpose: close the distance, strike the weak point, detonate with surgical precision. 7-inch propellers, high-torque brushless motors, custom guidance, and integrated AI. Each FPV could autonomously identify its target: T-72, B-3M, T-80B VM, BMP-2. It could lock onto structural weak points, gun mantlets, weld lines, the driver's hatch. Even under intense jamming, the drones held their course. Inertial guidance. Maximum error. Less than 6.5 feet. This is the reality of modern warfare. The payload. A shaped-charge heat warhead, designed to punch through side armor, turret roofs, and engine compartments. It was especially lethal against light armor BMPs, BTRs. But even a main battle tank was vulnerable to a precision strike from these defense systems. With onboard AI for autonomous navigation when losing signal, the FPVs were immune to Russia's electronic war. And in a twist of irony, the Krasuka's own high-powered jamming signal had just painted a massive target on its back. It was now the brightest beacon on the battlefield. Seconds later, the first kamikaze FPV screamed out of the sky. Its target, the MTLB housing the EW suite. The impact was direct. The warhead tore through the antenna compartment. The rear bay was open. The blast shredded the Krasuka's sensitive electronics. It incinerated the equipment and the soldiers inside. The jamming signal vanished. In its place, a pillar of black smoke climbed into the sky from the burning MTLB. The sudden silence in the spectrum was the first warning. The Russian column now understood the true scale of the ambush, a grim military update delivered by fire. But it was too late. They were caught. Trapped inside a 3-axis kill zone, panic set in. Turrets swung wildly. 125mm main guns fired blindly into empty fields. They were shooting at shadows, at fear itself, at nothing. Panic erupted. Several BMPs threw their transmissions into reverse, a grinding chaos of metal. They collided, mired in old ruts, pinned down by mud and earth. Seconds later, the third wave of FPV drones closed in. The lead T-72B3M, the spearhead of the northern prong, was caught mid-turn. The tank was frozen. The drone adjusted its attack vector, dropping to just 7.5 feet, approaching at a negative 28-degree angle. A direct hit. It slammed into the turret ring's weakest seam. The warhead punched through, detonating inside the primary ammunition compartment. Catastrophic kill. The turret was launched skyward. The overpressure flash consumed the crew. This was the lead vehicle in the war. The nerve center of the assault was gone. The formation had lost its head, its soldiers now operating in total disorder. Moments later, a Ural truck loaded with 122mm shells attempted a breakout. The next FPV drone intercepted it from the front. The strike was surgical, directly into the cargo bed packed with high-explosive weapons. The result wasn't just destruction. It was a chain reaction. Shell after shell cooked off in a violent cascade. The blast wave flung shrapnel into the adjacent BMP. Its steering was destroyed. The vehicle pivoted, blocking the western escape route. The third FPV was already hunting, slicing toward a bogged-down MTLB. The target was immobilized. The drone struck the weak point on its left armor plate. The detonation tore through its engine bay and command compartment. The hull ripped in two jagged sections tossed across the ground. Another critical support link for the advancing troops was gone. A BMP-2 tried a sharp reverse to evade the incoming UAVs, but collided with the vehicle behind it. The fourth FPV began its terminal dive. It plunged straight through the roof, the thinnest armor zone. Flames erupted. The rear doors were blasted open from the inside. There were no survivors. The Russian army's mechanized capability was being systematically dismantled. The T-80BVM, its tall comms antenna, a beacon, was next. This tank relayed signals to command, the formation's only voice. The 5th FPV stalked it from the east, striking the right side of the command bay. The antenna snapped. The communication suite went dark. The vehicle commander was neutralized. Every link of internal coordination was severed. In desperation, a UR-77 Meteorite engineering vehicle attempted to deploy its line charge. The 6th drone plunged from 33 feet, driving straight into the explosives container. The warhead ignited the line charge from the rear. It produced a massive, rocket-like backblast. The UR-77 detonated violently, fire streaking across the dry field in a grim spectacle of modern warfare. The blaze cut off any path for retreat. Russia's engineering assets were eliminated, their mobility gone. This military update was decisive. The entire Russian formation fractured. They became isolated clusters of military hardware. 4 BMPs and MTLBs huddled on the northern route. Their tracks churned uselessly in the mud. Another group, 2 T-80BVMs, 1 BMP, and a Ural carrying troops was also trapped. They attempted to swing west, a desperate bid to fall back. The remaining infantry, the dismounted soldiers, scattered. They ran for the eastern mounds, exposed and unsupported. But from the western tree line, the Ukrainian defense was waiting. Escape was impossible. Stugna P ATGM teams were positioned in a textbook L-shaped killbox, a classic tactic of asymmetrical warfare. Each team, 656 feet apart, established a crossfire, engaging the flanks of any target from 5 to 6 miles away. Then, the sky opened up. Ukrainian M777 artillery batteries launched 155mm shells in fan-shaped patterns. 3-round salvos blanketed the northern edges, boxing in any Russian troops abandoning their vehicles. This was no longer a battle. It was a methodical war analysis in real time. The objective was to lock down each cluster and neutralize them one by one. In under 5 minutes, the entire mechanized thrust was frozen in the open. The Lelika 100 drone recorded it all, every movement, every blast. The battle damage assessment was stark. 15 of the 30 vehicles were annihilated. Another 8 vehicles were left behind, burned out husks, crippled by failure or swallowed by mud. The rest of the troops never escaped the kill box. They were unable to maneuver, unable to rally. More than 45 Russian soldiers were taken out of the fight, most inside a 656-foot radius of fire. Not one Ukrainian infantryman revealed his position. Not a single rifle round was fired. This entire military operation was executed by drones and advanced defense systems. ATGMs and artillery struck from beyond retaliation range. The field southwest of Kostyantynivka had become a 500-meter belt of death, a corridor of flame and twisted metal. Tank hulls were torn open, their turrets thrown over 328 feet away by the force of the modern weapons. Shattered glass, shredded tires, and the charred stumps of antennas littered the ground like debris from a steel hurricane. The dirt road was scorched black, pocked with 8 to 12-inch impact craters, the signature of precise artillery, a key piece of defense technology. Black smoke blanketed the scene, hanging in the air for hours. Following this ambush, the Russian advance ground to a halt. The 93rd Brigade held its ground, their army reinforcing critical defensive positions. The T-0504 route, Russia's intended artery to Pokrovsk, was completely severed. Moscow had no choice but to declare the road closed. Recovery teams were dispatched, the damage was assessed. The offensive stalled for over 48 hours as Russian artillery and logistics units were rerouted east. This added over 31 miles to their journey, triggering supply delays across the entire southern front. This war analysis shows the ambush didn't just break one attack. It shattered the coherence of Russia's mechanized push. The 8th Combined Arms Army was forced to pause all operations, a major development in this global conflict. Reinforcements from Horlivka were forced into a defense posture, holding the Kostyantynivka-Druzhkivka line, a fact confirmed by ISW reports. This line became the new anchor of Ukraine's eastern defense. The battle was a textbook case of 21st century warfare, where infantry are no longer the tip of the spear. Instead, they are the final layer of a multi-tiered kill web. Ukraine delivered a harsh lesson in modern warfare. Victory is not won by the number of tanks or the mass of a formation. It is won by the speed of information and the coordination of layered fires from the Army, Navy, and Air Force. And it is won by the will to terminate the target decisively. When the Russian convoy entered that kill zone, it was meant to be a show of military force. When the engagement was over, only black smoke and charred hulls remained.